Hello. How are you, everyone? Ah, I have good news and bad news. Uh, the bad news is that Rico got busy at the last hour, sadly. So what happened with Rico is that his wife is at the hospital right now, and he had to go, be with her and take care of her. And yeah, that's completely understandable. Um, Rico, if you're watching the bot of this thing, if you see that I'm live for some reason, I didn't mean to like strain with you around. I didn't have like time to change the thumbnail last second, last minute, right? So, um, actually, let me edit the title then. uh, yeah, this is going to become one of those just chatting streams that people like so much. Just chatting. Let me just set that up. I'm just changing the title of the stream right now. I'm gonna have to add a thumbnail or something like that at a different point. Improm impromptu chatting stream. Yeah. Okay. So this is now an impromptu chatting stream. If you guys have any questions about Quebec 3, or if you have any questions about anything really, this is like the time to check that out. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I guess the point of the talking, because we don't really have like much of an opportunity to talk elsewhere. Yeah, streams have become a bit of a rarity in this channel. I've moved most of my streaming activities to the other channel, mainly because it was kind of a lot of it was gaming. A lot of it was just me playing video games and stuff. And, for people who are trying to do history or politics or that kind of stuff, I guess the gaming content got kind of spammy. So my idea was to move the streaming content over there. And yeah, since Rico couldn't be there, but I still had like a scheduled stream. I don't know for how many of you guys this was something you were looking forward to. But now, this is like an opportunity to talk. There have been like a couple of updates on the state of Quebec 3 on the Patreon. And yeah, um, I guess I can give you guys like a preview of what we've been doing over there. Where's lasagna? What do you mean? Where's lasagna? We don't have complimentary lasagna. I'm sorry, but yeah. Mm, Basically, for everyone new who's joining, Rico couldn't be here. Rico got busy. He has to be at the hospital with his wife. Um, and so I decided to turn this into a stream where we just talk. If you have like any political questions you'd like to ask me, any historical questions you would like to ask me, I think that's a good opportunity. That's a good opportunity. Actually, let me rename that. I think that's a better thing to have as the title. Ask me anything with Ravignon. Hello, Playhouse Films. How are you? yeah, this is just a stream where we talk. I guess we haven't got. Am I gonna be in Quebec 3? Probably not unless you become a Patreon. If you become a Patreon, I will add you to the credits. Um, Whenever I publish a video, the credits are always the content of the Patreons that are active up to the editing month. But there are also many patrons who contributed to Quebec 3 that sadly, their names no longer appear in my interface, so I can't consult them anymore. But if you were a patron and you had to go for, whatever reason, people have like a lot of reasons to stop doing anything on the stream, right? Thank you. Thank you very much. So yeah, you could be in Quebec 3 if you decided to give me like $1 a month. But unless that happens, I think, are you Lester Pearson? Are you Pierre Elliott Trudeau? I don't think so. So yeah, um, I think that out of all the liberal thinkers that I found in my history, just kind of studying politics and doing things on the side, Trudeau is probably my favorite liberal. Um, he's very coherent with his ideas. He took them kind of to their maximum implications, and I don't think a lot of people do that. Um, because liberalism is more about compromise in the modern age, I want to say. It's kind of about, existing in an environment where you have certain values and other people have certain values, and then you find like a midpoint between those. But liberalism as a process of looking forward to rational methods of governance, that is not something that happens as this extremist ideology. There were extremist liberalisms. There was, for example, historical radicalism in Europe, but that has kind of fallen out of fashion. And I think that Pierre Elliott Trudeau is the closest thing we've had in like the modern age to what would we say, to a radicalist. Yeah, a historical radicalist, because he truly was a person who believed in taking the ideas of individual rights to their ultimate conclusions and really transforming society into something egalitarian, which is not normal for Canadian leaders, because Canadian leaders are more centrist in a way. They're more about finding compromise and resolving things through the traditions. So yeah, hi Kame, welcome. I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to hear. If I become a major part of Quebec's history, will you put me in Quebec? Well, you have like 4 months until we finish the second part. The first part was just finished today in terms of illustration. I'm just going to record it and check what's up with that. How do I get in without contributing and helping in any way at all? You don't. I'm sorry. Yeah, like no freeloading. What do you think this is? A daycare? No. About that, I am Trudeau. This is an alt account. No, I'm sorry. Trudeau is dead. He sadly died of cancer. Yeah, that was very unfortunate. It always makes me very sad when people die of those kinds of diseases, I guess, because they're very hard on their families. And if you're ever going to die for whatever reason, I guess we're all going to die, right? But if you're going to die, if you have like no choice but dying, then I guess it's really hard that you have to die of a disease that, is degenerative and makes you, just kind of have a hard time. That's very tough. So I feel very bad for Trudeau. I think that Levesque, René Levesque, the other like regionalist, died of a heart attack. And a heart attack is bad, but it happens once, and your family doesn't have to see you suffer, I guess. So in that sense, I feel for Trudeau in a way I maybe don't feel for Levesque, though politically I think I agree more with René Levesque than Trudeau. So yeah. I will destroy Quebec and get out in Quebec. I mean, I guess you could do that, but why? That's plenty of time. Yeah, you have 4 months to completely annihilate Quebec and make it into that video. Oh well. I find it funny that a lot of people know me for the Quebec series. Uh, I am not the most educated person on Quebec. I based most of my learnings on one book, and I have been more passionate about other subjects, I guess, over the past 2 years. But you know, I think that I've done like something big enough to cement myself as the Quebec guy. So it is what it is. Where is Rico? Rico had to go to the hospital because his wife is unfortunately in need of attention. And yeah, he's being a good husband and going with his wife there. So, guys, if you ever are like a political streamer and your wife needs you and you have a stream at the same time, cancel stream. Cancel stream. Rico said like a good example. I think I've seen like examples of streamers on Twitch, for example, that their wives are calling them or telling them stuff, and they're like, "Get out of my room! I'm playing Minecraft," or like, "I'm debating like a Holocaust denier," or something. Yeah, get out of here. Fortunately for me, or unfortunately maybe, I'm not married yet, so I can debate all the streamers every day. May I help you? I know some people with explosives. Oh god, are you making a felikist felikist joke? Where is Raccoon Man? Raccoon Man had to go. He's busy. His wife needed him at the hospital. Are you knowledgeable about the Middle East? I know a couple of things, but I wouldn't call myself knowledgeable. Like not even an expert. VTuber over wife. I've been meaning to learn more about the Middle East because there's like a president of Egypt that I think I really like, who is the guy that was president of Egypt. Let me remember. Gamal Abdel Nasser. Yeah, Nasser. I think that Nasser is really interesting. The more I read about Arab socialism and that kind of thing, I find myself happy with a lot of their ideas. It's sadly a project that I think failed. The creation of Baath. And there were also many people who were Baathists who, um, you know, weren't really Republicans. They were just dictators and things like that. But by day's end, I still think that Arab socialism was like a good anti-colonial project and things like that. Oh my god, my VTuber model stopped moving. Is this okay? Oh no. Okay. Yeah. VTuber over wife. Goodness gracious. I'm not sure if getting married would be good. I mean, it depends. If it works for you, it works for you. Hell hath no fury compared to my wrath upon Quebec. I don't understand that. I've heard that there are like political streamers who are very anti-Quebec. Like, I think they just dislike the fact that they speak French. Uh, you know, why would you do that? Why would you dislike a group of people for a language that they speak? Um, yeah, it's like, oh, if you have to come here, you have to speak French. And I think I guess I kind of get why people are pedantic about that because, to an outsider, to someone who doesn't really know a lot about Quebec's history, it looks like just a bunch of white people in North America who are overly pedantic about their language, let's say. And, you know, maybe for them it's just like, oh right, like what gives you the right to be so angry, I guess.
But what a lot of people don't get is that the Quebec's experience, Quebec's historical experience, is more the experience of like a minority, right? An ethnic minority. And the reason why they're so protective about French is the same reason why a lot of people are protective about um, what would be a good equivalent of like Haiti and Creole, right? Or languages that are super regional and risk of extinction, and they need protections to um, continue existing. Like in Europe, if you go, for example, to Spain, to Catalonia, or if you go to Iceland, there are a lot of measures put in place to protect Icelandic from English and Catalan from Spanish and all of those things. It's normal for countries that have, something built upon linguistic minority rule to impose on themselves the situation where the law complicates the use of English. I guess in Canada it's just like a thing that gets to the level that it gets, because a lot of people, a lot of English speakers just don't want to speak another language. They're not interested in learning French. Um, and yeah, that's the thing. Uh, if I get married, I will become a $50 patron for Rafa. Why wait? Become a Patreon now. Give me money. I really appreciate all my Patreons. You guys keep the channel afloat. I yeah, I had a very difficult time in my life over the past couple of months, maybe a year and a half. It was really difficult. Got out of like I don't want to say relationship, but like a bad situationship, and I also had a lot of things impeding my workflow. It affected Quebec 3. It should have been done like way faster, but you know, my head and my time and my attention had to be all over the place. I started taking antidepressants and they did very good. They were like wonderful for me. But when I took them, mm, I got through like this very stupid period where I wanted to get off them. Just because, antidepressants, the way they work is that they numb your feelings in general. They make you stop feeling everything or stop feeling things as intensely. And I thought, like, yeah, I can get off them. I feel less anxious. I feel like I can work. And yeah, doing that without any psychologists or psychiatrists, that was fucked up. I shouldn't have done that. But yeah. Oh man, I have to go. Bye. Yeah, bye. See you. Thanks for coming. Um, yeah, it's been that kind of thing. The problem with Arab socialism is that Gamal Abdel Nasser didn't establish a functioning base on which his ideology may thrive separate from him. That is super interesting that you say that, because that's a problem that a lot of ideologies have, especially post-revolutionary regimes. You could say the same thing about Jacobinism and things like in Mexico, the current government, you know, the Morena party. There are a lot of governments and ideologies and parties and systems of political governance, right, that are incredibly rooted in the vision of a leader or a figure. And it's very unclear sometimes how the movement will continue when you don't have the figure, right? Um, yeah, so the figure goes away, and then all of a sudden, uh, there are like rivalries and people who fight for power. But since the vision is so complicated, since there are so many disagreements about what the orthodoxy should be, um, then the project falls apart. I guess that happened with Marxism in a way. Um, Marx got a lot of things wrong, but one thing that he did very successfully while he was alive was to keep the orthodoxy in the theory and add coherence to a lot of the things he talked about and postulated. Uh, After Marxism, Marxism after Marx, I should say, became incredibly factional. Um, there were people who wanted to like remix it and create like these like offshoots and things like that. And yeah, it didn't work out great for a lot of people. The anarchists got kicked out of the international. The international. By this I mean there was an organization that united all the socialists, since they were the minority, the ideological minority all over the world. And it was called the International. And in the International, you had anarchists, you had communists, you had democratic socialists, though at the time, there wasn't really a distinction between communism and socialism. Um, yeah, that sort of thing. That was what the International was for. And, after Marx, after he died and after, he couldn't be there, that thing fell apart. And you had like a second international, and then a third international, and then a fourth international, and right now people are discussing the creation of a fifth. But I don't think there'll be a I don't think there's a good candidate for a fifth yet. I regret going off of antidepressants. I took them for a brief period like 5 years ago. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. um it's really complicated to see how, once you get into that medication, you have to be really careful because it changes your brain. I think the way that antidepressants work is that it it tries to change um, the chemical homeostasis of your brain, making it more less resistant to stress, I guess, because that's what serotonin uptake inhibitors do, right? They normalize your brain if you're a person that's used to be very stressed to uh, the brain of a person who is not as stressed. So if you go off them all of a sudden, then things will be very difficult for you because um, it's very likely that if you're taking antidepressants, you're still in a high stress environment or you still have high stress triggers. And antidepressants are there to help you cope with that. And if you take them off, it can be like worse for you. So yeah. English is the lingua franca of the world, and that's why most people who have it as a first language don't learn any other languages. Yeah, that's true. By the way, your videos are wonderful. The Quebec series was very informative, especially for myself who grew up and lived in Vancouver forever. Yeah, thank you. That makes me very happy to hear. Um, One of the things that I like the most about the Quebec series, from the perspective of the creator, I guess this is something that a lot of people won't get to experience, but, from the perspective of the publisher, right? I got a lot of messages and a lot of comments from people who are from English Canada at large, who told me that, they feel like the education system doesn't really cover the contents of, what happened with Quebec, right? Quebec is covered maybe not in a negative light, but in a very ambivalent light. And they're not really discussed as an oppressed people, but rather in Canada, there's this founding myth that, Canada was created by the two founding peoples, which were the French Canadians and the English Canadians. And the French Canadians are only in Quebec, and the English Canadians, they're part of British history and British historical development and all that kind of stuff. And Canadian history is taught in these like very general ways in school. Um, there's not enough like empathy for French Canadians, even though French Canadians, for example, exist in every province in Canada. They're not only in Quebec. Um, so yeah, I guess a lot of people when they saw the series, they were like, "Oh, I never learned this in school," and now I guess I understand why people make an effort to speak French or to include French in our institutions, or why, for example, the premier of Manitoba or the premier of British Columbia, even if they don't speak a lot of French around where I am, they still have to make an effort to, get by and get around in French, because there are French Canadians everywhere. So I guess that's kind of the most. I'm not a historian. I'm a mathematician, but for someone who works in history, that's one of the best things you can feel. Um, to know that the things that you create help people have more empathy for each other, and that's super cool. That's probably the thing that makes me the happiest about the Quebec series. That maybe a lot of people who didn't really have the opportunity to learn about something about themselves uh, can look at something I created and say, like, oh yeah, this makes me happy. This makes me able to understand something that I didn't understand before. So yeah, I hate how history is taught in the USA just repeat the same topics every year. Yeah, I guess curriculum is kind of complicated in the US. I'm not American, but something that is kind of known in the university system outside of the United States, so in France, in Mexico, in Germany, is that, American education, when it comes to the lower level, it's very bad. It's terrible. The American people who are below university level are like dramatically uneducated unless they go seek out an education or additional information for themselves. But the moment you reach the college level, American colleges are incredible at creating a rescue system that takes people from both abroad and domestically, and the domestic scene, and create some of the best professionals that exist on earth. So yeah, that's the thing with American colleges, the American education in general, right? We all kind of know that it's bad, but then when you get to the university level, something happens, and all of a sudden, American colleges are super good, and they create amazing professionals. That's one argument I heard as for why American college is so expensive and should remain expensive, which is perhaps a bit of an unpopular opinion. I don't agree with it, of course, but the argument goes that when you're going to an American university, you're not only getting like a university education, you're also getting a sort of pedigree or insurance that guarantees that no matter what you do or no matter where you go, people are going to respect your capabilities. And that's not the same in every country, right? If you get a free education in Chile or in Colombia, for example, and then you try to go practice medicine like elsewhere, um, odds are that you're not going to have, your licensing respected as you would get it in other places. But if you get like a MD license from Princeton, let's say, then yeah, everyone agrees that you had like a good education. So paying for college in the United States is also kind of like paying for insurance. And should insurance be free? Should you have access to like a university like Harvard for free, or like the Ivy League colleges? That's the argument that I hear the pro private school people make, and I don't agree with it. But I think that it's interesting. It's not something I had considered. If you're like a hyper capitalist, I guess, you can look at college as insurance, and that's kind of special. Absolutely agree. I got thought about in school was how English took over Quebec after the Plains of Abraham. Yeah, lower upper Canada, that's pretty much it. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. That's kind of disappointing because, I think that a lot of people who are English Canadian um, don't really understand why French is important. They're just like, oh yeah, this is like a weird thing that we do that makes us quirky, but I don't think it's something that a lot of people understand why it exists. there's like this channel by a guy called JJ McCullough. Love to the guy, because I'm not trying to start drama or anything, but he does give me the impression that he's one of those English Canadians that, you know, they'd rather not have that. They'd rather not speak French. They'd rather not have like that thing be something that they have to confront or do. And I guess, you know, you can have any political opinion that you want, but from my perspective, having studied Quebec history, as someone who's not from Canada even, I think that that's kind of an insensitive thing to postulate, because you're not being like respectful, I guess, to your country's historical, material, uh, cultural conditions and why things have developed in the way that they have developed. Hey, I'm from Quebec and also currently living in Quebec City. I love your series and your content generally. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's interesting that French is, or at least was, some sort of popular language globally in the past, even in parts that were never colonies of the French, like here in Egypt. Ooh, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess that French, we French people just kind of larped too hard. I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna bring civilization to the world, but we sucked at it. Every country that had an empire kind of engaged in civilizational ideas of going out to the world and telling people like, this is how you're gonna do things now. This is like the way that you have to behave if you're doing like stuff. uh and there are people who, aside the imperial ambitions of France, did actually just like the French model, because we created a republic and we didn't have kings, and we tried to create something that was more resembling to universal rights before the Americans or the British did. And I guess for a lot of people that seems like interesting. um and there are people like Ataturk, or people like, I forget his name. uh yeah, like some West African leaders who look at France as an example of, oh, this is like a model that can generate like a certain level of success. But that's going out of the window increasingly. I think that France, you know is no longer a superpower. France is more a country that is post-imperial and is trying to cope with the fact that it lost its empire. Um, the really smart French people that I know, like people who have gone to college, have this attitude about the empire of realizing, like, we fucked up the world, we fucked up uh, a bunch of countries for a lot of people, we messed up, um, you know, a bunch of places like Vietnam, like Mali, like, what have you. Uh, and they take this idea towards immigration that, I don't understand why people say that the immigrants are stealing from us after we stole so much from them, right? Like we stole from the Algerians and we stole from people. So, a lot of French people have empathy towards migrants because of that, but a lot of people also don't. I guess, it comes down to like the same thing that the English Canadians have to struggle with, which is like their own sense of historical responsibility and uh, cultural identity. Yeah. Yes, I learned nothing before college. Oof. I have friends and coworkers from Quebec and France, actually. Amazing people, hands down. I'm glad you like them. Yeah, we have a reputation for not being the most polite. uh, I don't think it's that we're rude. It's more that in French culture, it's expected that you have to be direct. It's expected that you don't have to like flower your language or take a lot of time to say something. Which is someone who has autism. It can be a bit difficult to have a conversation with someone because they will get like highly on your face and ask you to speak quickly and make your point, because otherwise you are being annoying. I guess that's useful. It's a useful skill to have, but it's also not real super empathetic. When I was 11 years old, I took French because I thought Italy was France. Bruh. Don't say that to someone outside of a stream. Oh my god. Oh, it's a really common instance in Quebec. Tons of uncertified diplomas. Yeah. Basic insurance should be provided by the government. I don't know. I think that insurance is kind of a predatory concept from the get go. I would rather we didn't have to, work with a system of insurances. For Americans, I kind of understand why you want public insurance, because Obamacare, that's basically what it is, right? It's the government buying insurance for you. Mm. Instead of creating like a public healthcare system. But yeah, I mean, I think that the concept of insurances is kind of inherently predatory, and I'm not a fan. So yeah. Hi Ravignon, I just joined your Discord and I've been a fan of your work with crowd. Thank you! Thank you for joining. If you guys want to join the Discord, or support me or do anything really, all the links are in the description. I hope you like what you see there. Join the Discord. I can drop it in the chat as well. We have like an invite. Yeah, I'm very proud of my Discord. Um, if you want to join, I dropped the link. Yeah, my Discord is something that I always wanted. I guess I. It's not true that I always wanted to have a Discord server, but throughout the past, since I entered college, right, I've been super active on Discord, and I kind of wanted to create a community that worked, because I've been to a lot of communities that don't really work throughout my years in this like Skype substitute, and I think that mine works. It's gotten to this point where it kind of runs on its own, even if there's not like an active moderation. And the fact that I banned a bunch of swear words, created like a sort of nanny state over there, has made people behave. My community is well behaved, I think. Um, it's kind of like a fatherly Discord, I want to say, because I will let you do pretty much whatever you want as long as you don't upset me personally. There are rules, right? Like there are rules. It's a community server. It's supposed to be like legalistic, but since we don't have the infrastructure for it uh, yet, which is something that I'm trying to get done at some point, and pay someone, because moderating a Discord is an actual job. Community management is an actual job, and I can do that at the same time that I'm doing like my channel and college. So that's a good. I think I've worked very hard to achieve something like a community that kind of works on its own and likes each other and is friendly. So yeah, I'm very proud of it, because it's a better Discord server than most servers I've spent, you know, hours in in the past. That's how I started a YouTube channel. Actually, I used to be like one of those like Discord debaters. I would spend hours debating, and then I would come out of it saying like, "Bruh, I just used a lot of time making political points in a server that in a conversation that's gonna fade away in the wind, and I could create something more permanent by turning these conversations into videos. And now it's gotten me to like a really good point in my in my life. So I guess it worked out for me to be like a Discord addict. So yeah. No limit. That's why French is actually the original lingua franca, hence the franca. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, during the French Revolution, people like Anacharsis Clout wanted French to be spoken everywhere. And, it was a staple of French politics that, well, French international politics, that people used to believe that you could only articulate rational thought if you were speaking in French. You were like, oh, the people who speak English, who learn English whenever they travel abroad, they become like stupid. That kind of thing. We were very intent on pushing French as hard as we could, and to this day we have like an international institution called La Francophonie, which unites all the French-speaking countries, regions, and administrations into a single entity that protects French and helps French and creates resources for French. Do you think French Canada would survive multiculturalism in the long term? Ooh. Wait for Quebec 3. I have a really elaborate argument that I don't want to post here on the stream because I've been working on that argument for a while. Uh, the answer is it depends, and it depends on how Canada decides to solve some important questions relating to both immigration and geopolitics. So yeah. Question: what spoken language do you think will eventually replace English as the global lingua franca? French and Arabic has solid 500-year rounds. Will Mandarin be next? That's interesting. That's a very interesting question. Here's the thing with Chinese. If you look at Mandarin Chinese, you will notice that it is a language that a lot of people in East Asia already speak, and that's where most people who are alive, right, live. It's a very difficult language for the West because it has fundamentally different rules, like shi, 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 shi. Those are four different words, right? Because it's a tonal language. So the tone, the intonation adds like meaning to the things that you're saying. So yeah, in that sense, Chinese is very, very special, and I think a lot of people in the West won't really bother to learn it, or at least not without educational system reform. But in China, the Chinese government has actually been super respectful, or rather, super admissive of the fact that so many people speak English as a language of business, right? So, scientific articles, business deals, publications, government communications. Chinese people, at least the Chinese government, has really bothered to try to adopt the fact that so many people speak English already from a practical point of view, and it has tried to make people very adept in English in a way that I don't think other countries have quite as much. So the way I kind of see it is that China has been very practical, and it has incorporated English in pretty much all the literature that it produces, at least all the public literature. So when I look at them, when I look at China, I don't really see a country that's looking forward to, change the language of everyone around them. I think that they realized that English is just kind of like the thing right now. And at least at the moment, I don't perceive that they have ambitions to change the fact that English is like the most widely spoken language. I guess there are people who are saying like, oh, in 400 years or like in the next 50 years, Chinese is going to become super important. And chances are it's going to become really important. But I don't think it's going to become, like English level important. Here's the thing though. if you're trying to become a country that is rich through business, if you want to become like the lingua franca through the sheer power of business, English has a very big advantage, because if you combine North America, like English, British North America, and Europe, which are places where English is like widely spoken because of NATO and the European Union and the United States and its influence. Uh, that's like over 50% of the world's GDP. So English is going to be important regardless. Um, Arabic and Mandarin and French, they might, but we need to wait even longer for like Africa and China to get to the peak of their power, to see if people will actually bother. And by the time that happens, I'm not even sure if English will be like widely spoken in those countries as well. So yeah, dictator Rav, yes. Hey Ravignon, really enjoy your content. Keep up the great work. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate hearing that. Maybe a man-made language? I'm not sure. I think that why would you create? You need to think as an economist, right? If you are not like how would I say this? Business is practical. The essence of business is doing things that are practical and functional, and creating a language that is popular through the power of the business that it can be adjacent to is really difficult if you try to create a language from zero. Like if you go to the UN and say like, oh, let's all learn Esperanto because now we want people to like speak a language that's like neutral and that has rules from every language. Creating that change is very difficult. And if you're like a practical person, you're going to take advantage of the things that already exist. At this point, I think that English transcends the UK, Britain. It's a language of the world. Britain, this decade and maybe the next, is going to become increasingly irrelevant as a country. They have been making stupid decision on top of stupid decision because of the way that their government works. They also are struggling to get rid of the Tory party, though they really should, honestly. And as long as they continue down this road that they're going right now, I don't think people are going to think of the UK as important. The UK was important when it was in the EU, because it was like the big country in a family of big countries. It was one of the bigger brothers in a family of states. But right now, the UK is just kind of out of it. And, they're out of the EU by themselves. They don't have the power of, like, even some American states by themselves. Yeah, they kind of shot themselves in the foot. So I don't think, English, as much as it's a complicated language, from, like, this colonial perspective, that it's going to serve imperial interests for much longer. Because, as Britain and the US become smaller and smaller parts of the world, we'll have to see what happens with how English evolves. I think that honestly, Canada and Australia have more potential to develop than the UK. At least from my perspective, looking, 2023, and looking at the decisions that both countries have made over the past 5 years. Also, nice background. Thank you. What are your thoughts on interculturalism from Manitoba? I never got to learn about it yet and its consequences. Ooh. Interculturalism is something that I really like conceptually, because it's basically the idea that, you create a public person and every culture can exist. But in the public, you create like a unifying factor that everyone can relate to. So multiculturalism, it's like the Canadian ideal, this thing where you don't have like a public person, you don't define a public person, people just come in and they exist as Canadians, but behind closed doors and outside those doors, people can be whatever they want. Interculturalism is more the Quebec way, in which you have a French public person, a French public ideal, and a French public consciousness. But different cultures and different perspectives are accepted as long as everyone kind of vibes with the overarching public idea. So, the way that the Canadians say it is that we're all united because we're all different. And the way that the Quebec people say it is like, we're all united, but we're all united because despite all being different, we come together in these broad cultural ideas that we all want to protect. And what are those cultural ideas? It's the French language, it's, a certain approach towards secularism, all these things. I think it works. I personally like interculturalism more than multiculturalism, and it's kind of what we attempted to do in France as well. But the problem with interculturalism is that it can be intolerant, because you run into the problem of defining the public person, right? Who is the public person? How does the public person have to be? What characteristics do we want the public person to have? And when that is being defined by a majority, by a group of people who are just kind of overwhelming and all over the place, just by sheer numbers, right? You can run into this problem where your culture, your subjective culture, is kind of forced on others from this argument that, oh, right, what interculturalism is you accepting to assimilate in minor ways to the majority, right? You assimilate to the majority and you become kind of like, the melting pot. In that sense, I think interculturalism is very American, and I don't like the American model a lot, because the way that the United States kind of treats its immigrants is that, if you go to the US, you go to become part of a small community within a family of smaller communities. There are like these regional neighborhoods that are like, the ethnic neighborhoods where the immigrants live. And then, there's like things like Chinatown and stuff like that, where it's all regionalites, Koreatown. And in that sense, I don't think it's super functional. I guess I don't love the fact that you create, artificial segregation through this idea that, you can have whatever you want behind closed doors, but when you come out to the public, when you come out to society, you have to have a common person, right? Like, we're all Americans, we're all Quebecois. I guess my problem with that is that what we've seen, not in theory, right, but like in practice, is that it creates isolated neighborhoods of people who, you know, gather around on the fact that they're migrants, and they create these like sub societies inside society. And if you're a liberal, maybe maybe that doesn't vibe with you. As a socialist, I am a democratic socialist, specifically a Fabianist. I believe in internationalism. I think that we're going to have that diversity either way, so I don't really mind it. But I don't like the idea that we define the public person based on cultural ideas, because I think that if we do that, we kind of create or recreate, I should say, supremacist structures where we privilege some cultures over others when it comes to defining what the public person is. Um, yeah, that's like textbook majoritarianism, I guess. So yeah, love the Quebec videos, by the way. Thank you, thank you. What business cares about NATO? Like all the businesses, of course. All the businesses care about NATO. Like NATO will say things like, "Get out of this country because we're going to boycott them and we're going to war with them," and everyone leaves. Did you know that Adidas was like one of the biggest companies in Russia? Because in the 1990 Olympics, I think, the Soviet team wore Adidas. They wore Adidas tracksuits. And then everyone was like, "Oh my god, Adidas! These guys look so fancy. They got clothes from the West. They look like super cool." And ever since in Eastern Europe, after the collapse of the Soviet Union and what have you, Adidas became the symbol of social climbers. Because what you had in Adidas was like the clothes of prestige. The Soviet Union didn't really allow for visions of individual success. It didn't really allow for people to have like um, glory and fame the way that Americans are used to having glory and fame. But the closest thing you could have to status was being an athlete, being a very successful athlete. And to be an athlete in the Soviet Union, you had to go through like a lot of filtering, a lot of institutional barriers, and a lot of challenges. And you had to become good. You had to become really good at what you were doing. To become an artist, to become like a person who had success, a person who was recognized in the public for your contributions, right? You had to do that. And the people who were recognized the most in this setting were people who did sports, because in sports the Soviets could really shine and go to the world and say like, "Oh, look how powerful we are, like look how much success we can generate, look how we're beating the Americans in X or Y and Z," and that kind of thing. So the cultural heroes in the Soviet Union were athletes. And when Adidas came to Russia, everyone wanted Adidas because Adidas was like the symbol of oh, maybe you can't like train as much as Soviet athlete. Maybe you don't have like the time to like get as fit as a Soviet athlete. Maybe the institutions to create Soviet athletes are no longer a thing, but you can purchase the looks of a Soviet athlete by buying the clothes that Adidas produces. And for a lot of people who lived through both the Soviet Union and the capitalist Russia, the neoliberal Russia, that was so cool, right? Because now you could dress up like like a superhero basically. And that's why in Eastern Europe, Adidas is such a big brand. And you say what businesses care about NATO, right? What businesses care about these decisions? Adidas has pulled out of Russia. They stepped out of this tremendously huge market that they had because of developments that happened in international politics, because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So yeah, I mean, these kinds of things affect everything. Yeah, well, there aren't many of those, and they mainly deal with individual countries. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm talking about something different. English will likely always be the international language. It's way too embedded and institutionalized. So also, why change anyways? People are like, yeah. As education has gotten better, I think people also don't really bother to talk about changing languages, I guess. Um, Even in Quebec, I think that English was like really controversial back when the education system wasn't as good, and English was like a language of the minority or the elites or people who could afford to learn both languages at the same time. Um, but right now, the education system is good, and English is very accessible, and a lot of people can learn it. And I guess it's easier to for people to think that, oh, we're going to learn about we're going to learn English instead of just reforming the world and making sure that everyone speaks like this kind of language. Also, banking a lot of companies from America exited in Europe. What? Self-segregation is a big problem in the US. Yes, yes, because the US is also like it believes in the melting pot, right? It believes in the idea of the public person. Um, the idea of the public person, this thing about we all have our differences, but we agree that this thing is what brings us all together. That thing is usually defined by the majority, by the cultural majority of a country. And you can easily say, like, oh, yeah, the English Anglo Saxon Protestant majority, we get to define what American culture is. People say, like, America is a Christian nation, and we are, like, culturally Christian, and we have these values and this kind of thing. You can't both believe that America is a Christian nation, culturally speaking, not even religiously, right? And that there's a melting pot. That's like true, because in the context of this like majoritarian culture, the melting pot actually is like reforging the immigrant into something that fits with the comfortable sensitivities of the majority. So yeah, I don't see what this has to do with NATO. Shut the fuck up, liberal cringe. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, the influence of markets and wars is like that sort of thing. It has that sort of effect. I can see the potential intolerance you're describing because it might feel like it is perpetuating a double consciousness, to borrow from black theorists. Yes, yes, double consciousness is like a great way to describe this. Um, in France, we have also like a term for it in terms of laïcité, for example. Like laïcité is a particularly French form of secularism in which we are very strict about keeping religion out of the state. But because French people are the majority, right? French people are overwhelmingly Catholic as well. Symbols of Catholicism are not moderated as strictly when it comes to like practical matters and application, right? They're not moderated as strictly as, for example, um, symbols of Islam or symbols of Judaism. And we have a way, we have a term to call this. We call it Catho-laïcité. It's laïcité but Catholic, in the sense that we are laïcité. We believe in laïclique. We believe in keeping like religion out of the state, but Catholics, that's culture. Having a bell as an icon for your phone, that doesn't have anything to do with the church. That's culture. Having like crosses when someone has a tomb, yeah, that's not religious, right? That's culture. But having symbols of Judaism, having like the the hexagram, or having the moon and crescent, that's religious. That's ethnic. Ew. That's like the way that French people, yeah, the way we sort of describe majoritarianism in this kind of way. The fact that even though we're committed to this like general ideal, um, in practice, what happens is that the majority can still kind of abuse its condition as a majority to privilege the things that you know we practice. And I think that in Quebec something similar happened, like in the Quebec l'Assemblée législative. I don't know what you call it. It's like your parliament, your small regional parliament. Um, you had a cross. You had a cross above the chair of the speaker, and for a long time, even the the Pequists, the Pequist government, the liberal government, all of these people were like, yeah, no, 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 don't remove the cross. The cross is cultural, and it actually took like the current guy to remove it. I forget his name, but he's from the Coalition Avenir Québec. Uh, he's like a conservative, I think. I don't know, but he removed the cross. He took the conservative to remove the cross. L'Assemblée Nationale. I work there. Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. I feel really flattered actually that there's people who work in the government who are like looking at my videos. Oh, that's so flattering. I feel so humbled. Thank you. The impossible distinction between the public and private was a great point to key on too. Thanks. Yeah, yeah. It's really difficult. I think that if you want to create a public person, you have to create it on ideals that are not cultural, because when you create a public person based on cultural ideals, you get to define those ideals first. You have to create like the ideals first, and if you just take something that already exists, chances are that you're going to take like um, something from a culture, and that culture will be like unfairly privileged. That's the thing that's really tough for liberals. I'm not a liberal, but if you're a liberal, this is like a theoretical problem that you may have to struggle with individually, which is that the way that liberalism works is that you believe that the state is empowered through a body of the people that is sovereign, and then it comes together to create individual rights and community rule and all these sort of things, right? So liberals believe in the power of, the unified polity to create a community of equals, and then the community of equals creates rules and creates a structure for society. But the thing is that, as much as you think that works conceptually, liberals never tell you, or well, not liberals, but liberal theory never tells you how to construct this body of the people, right? It just assumes that the people exist. And that's the problem with nationalism and things like that, because, there are infinitely many ways to define a people. And if you control the definition of the people in liberalism, you can exclude people from, the institutions, from the community of equals. Like, you can, for example, say if you're in the United States that you don't think Black Americans should be considered people, and now you have them out of the state. They're not considered citizens. And that was what the American Supreme Court ruled way back in the 1850s, I think, with something called the Dred Scott decision. Um, there's also things that you can do, like in Canada, where, for instance, Chinese people were not considered citizens, or there were people who were not able to become citizens. The First Nations in Canada as well, for a long time, existed in a sort of legal limbo, where the state considered them essentially minors, and they were not allowed to, break certain forms of patronage from the federal government. And yeah, it's really complicated. So liberalism is so focused on individual, the individual rights perspective, that it seems to be blind to problems that are communitarian in nature. And in that sense, wards of the state, yes, yes, yes. In that sense, it becomes really difficult, even for people like Trudeau, for example. Trudeau Senior. I think that the Trudeau Junior is kind of. I don't know. I don't think he's super serious as a politician. But yeah, Trudeau Senior, he really struggled with creating like community structures and thinking that institutions can also give rights to people, because he was so focused on the individual perspective. And right now, this is an open question for liberals, because even, the 21st century liberals, like Francis Fukuyama, for example, they're not good at dealing with this question. They can describe it, they can, like, maybe observe it, but they don't have solutions for it. And I have not found a liberal that has, yet solved this in political theory. So, yeah. True about Adidas. I've been to Poland and Adidas is still a thing. Yeah, they love it. It's a symbol of status. Well, not anymore. I think it has kind of evolved past it, but yeah. My city is really bad for self-segregation. Yeah, I mean, it's an American city. I guess that kind of what goes. L'Assemblée Nationale, I work there. I work in the summer camp we have there. Oh, that's so cool. I want to see it one day. I'm kind of sad that I didn't get to see it when the cross was there, because I kind of wanted to like take pictures of it. But I guess that would be very difficult. I work for the feds too. Oh my god, this chat is full of feds. I'm not a socialist. Leave me alone. Did you mean François Legault for the prime minister? Yes, Legault. He has been. Um, yeah, he's very complicated. I don't know what to think of Legault because when I look at Legault, I kind of see that he's kind of created a conservatism that works for Quebec. You know, he's created the conservative revolution that I think people like Stephen Harper wanted to create for wider Canada but didn't succeed at. Uh, and um, that's really weird because Quebec had like 70 years of uninterrupted liberal, liberal ideologically government. And all of a sudden, right, a conservative comes in and breaks that convention. Uh, the PQ is about to die. There are like a lot of things that. Um, yeah, it's difficult. He also did really well during COVID, I think, or at least that's the impression that the Canadians I talked to gave me. That he did well during COVID, and he also did well with the economy. And a lot of people who are very practical and don't care about politics are like, yeah, this works, you know. But he has a lot in common with, members of the French far right that I don't especially like. So that makes me a little uncomfortable. I have to say, though, that Legault is way better than the French far right. Like, he's not even comparable to the things that are going on in France right now. If France had the levels of immigration that Quebec has, I think Madame Le Pen would be president. Because Quebec is a lot better at assimilating immigrants than France is. Um, but even then, it's like a Quebec flavor of right wing that is very unique, and I'm not sure if I can develop an opinion on Legault, which is kind of embarrassing because I've been studying Quebec for like so long, and now this figure comes in, and he's not comparable to Duplessis. He did something super different. I guess he's also governing through like an interesting coalition of sorts, but he's very new. He's bringing in very new questions. I don't, as someone who works mainly in history and political theory from like 50 years ago, right? I'm not sure if I can, if I can have like a developed opinion on Legault. So yeah. The people east of the world, liberalism has no. What are you saying, Kami? We still have it and can see it through the window. The cross is still there. I thought it was removed. Huh. What the hell? Yeah, like I was thinking like, oh, they removed the cross. That's so cool. Because the way that we think about it in France, when I saw news about the cross being removed, um, it was like, oh wow, it took the Quebec conservatives to struggle against Catholicité in a way that, French liberals and French socialists have not been able to do. They took down the cross. They took like a step against Catholicism. And in France, that's kind of crazy. Like, nobody would think about that because of this whole stuff. But yeah, I thought it had been removed. Maybe they took it down for a while to like clean it or something. So yeah. I don't think anyone, including liberal theorists, have figured out how to balance the rights of two opposing cultural groups. Yeah, that's very difficult. I guess it's going to be like the problem of our age, right? The interests of groups and the rights of groups. Because, I don't know, I guess there's no framework to discuss like the rights of an institution, right? Like slavery or a country. Countries don't have a right to exist. Slavery doesn't have a right to exist because they're institutions. Institutions don't have rights. People have rights, but is a group of people an institution? Like that's the kind of discussion that's going to become the 21st century discussion. How do we give rights to groups? Or should we give rights to groups? Or how do we structure, you know, rights for groups? That's going to be the next challenge. It's a weird smell of conservatism. Only thing I'll say is that he would be worse on climate. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, climate change is really complicated. I think that Quebec right now has an issue where they're trying to build like a pipeline that connects them to Alberta, but Quebec doesn't want it because Hydro-Quebec is like really powerful, and they don't need it. The way that the Albertans would like to think about it is that, oh, Quebec is really green and it's holding back our ability to do oil. So by bringing oil to Quebec, we will invest them in our infrastructure project. Um, but Quebec is like, no, we don't want your oil. Leave us alone. So yeah, I guess that's a thing that the federal government will have to resolve. Uh, who knows if the gold will like fail in favor of the Albertans? I hope he doesn't. Climate change is really important. Um, right now in the city that I live in, we don't have water anymore. I have to get water supplied by a truck because there's like a drought. There are a lot of droughts throughout the year, and there has been like a failing on one of the dams that we have. It's completely one of the walls broke down. So yeah, I mean, if you live in a country that is not as affected by climate change, uh, you should definitely take care of it because it's very different to take care of the climate. Of counting the water that you use, the way I have to do right now. Um, because you're forced into it rather than because you choose to do it. So yeah, take care of your resources, appreciate them. I think it's kind of sad that as a species, as humanity, we haven't been able to do things on climate change as fast. I have tried to become vegan and vegetarian twice and thrice respectively, and I really struggle. I really admire vegetarians. I think that they're right, morally speaking, but I can't do it. I'm constantly trying, but I guess meat is too convenient. It's a lot of calories that you don't have to chew as much. You don't have to be cooking all the time. And for a person who's like as busy as I am, and as mentally ill as well, right? Some days I just can't like cook. It does become a little difficult to maintain like any kind of I don't want to say restrictive diet. I would say like just conviction diet, I guess. At least from the Anglosphere, yeah. If I was in Quebec during the pandemic, I think I would have lost my mind. No way to curfews. Yeah, yeah. I heard a lot of people were complaining about how strict the Quebec government was about curfews, but they came out of the pandemic well enough, I guess. That's something that the Florida guy, the Florida governor, uh, Robin DeSantis, I think, he's also kind of well known for. He did well during the pandemic. He was one of the conservatives who did well during the pandemic. Maybe, the spread of the virus was relatively high in Florida, but not enough people died, and business recovery was faster than in most of the United States. So a lot of people who like Robin DeSantis don't like him because of his, uh, social regression kind of stupid conservative ideas. They like him because he was like a very efficient bureaucrat, I guess. He was very good at uh, doing the economic recovery after COVID, and a lot of people feel like that, worked out for them. So that's the thing with the DeSantis guy. Though I don't know, I don't like him. I understand why someone who is like, oh no, I lost my job during COVID, right? They would like him, but I don't. Um, what is your favorite animal that is native to Mexico? The quetzal. It's a bird, and it has a tail, and it's green. I will write it in the chat so you can Google it. Um, Quetzal. Quetzal. There you go. It's like a bird, and it's green, and it has a tail, and it's very long. And when it flies, it looks like a snake. Uh, that's like kind of going in the air. It's very beautiful, but it's a southern bird. I'm a northerner. Mm. Not in the Salon Bleu, but in a viewing window in the visiting area. Oh shit! The cross is still there. Oh my god! Wow. Okay. Wow, I can still see the cross. Okay, I have to go to Quebec. Mm. No, because group of people changed too much for the law to keep up. Yeah, I guess the thing with that is that if you cement like the rights of the law, the rights of people as groups into the law, you kind of solidify that into the state as well. Like in Belgium, they tried that with something called pillarization, where, for example, the way that the Belgians think about it is that abortion is a women's issue. If you want to decide on abortion, you need the opinion of a woman, like forcibly so. At the federal level, at the municipal level, they've kind of created institutions so that groups of people have rights. They also created that for Protestants and Catholics. That was initially created to like solve religious disputes, right? And Lebanon also has rights according to like national groups. The thing with the Lebanese is that they're like a very good example of how that can become problematic because you kind of you solidify groups and you antagonize them a little. Um, do you have any questions for a federal public servant? If you're curious about anything, feel free to ask. 50-50% chance I can answer it. That's super interesting. If I had been more prepared for that, I would have liked to ask you a more intelligent question, but I'm not sure if I have something on the spot. Oh, okay. I guess do you there's like this thing I think it's called Loi 101. The French language charter, I think it's called. And then when Bourassa became premier, he made this thing where signs had to be in French in the exterior. Uh, the outside of a building had to have a sign in French. But then the federal government kind of ruled that as unconstitutional, and now uh, the sign outside can be in whatever language. And but inside, I think there are rules for the sign that's inside and the sign that's outside. Has that changed? I think that my knowledge of Quebec language laws just kind of stops at the 90s. I wish I had a more intelligent question to ask you, but yeah, I'm not prepared. If I was like, yeah, I would have loved to ask you something smarter. By refusing to eat meat, they increase our share, so it's okay by me. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can take a lot of, you can make a lot of decisions to take care of the environment more. I'm very careful with water now. I can't quit meat yet, as hard as I try. I try to buy produce, from Mexico, from like local stores and farmer markets, because that way, they don't have to be brought in by a truck from like other places. Um, and what else? Yeah, I mean, I guess there are a lot of little decisions you have to do. You can make to take care of the environment. Um, you don't have to like make all of them, right? But yeah, I've been considering vegetarianism because it's like the next step for me. It's still much more French, but you do see English names on the outside. Ah, I see. Right, so I guess the law stayed. just as it was. Sorry, no idea on that one. Okay. So what do you do? Um, as a federal public servant, do you say bonjour, hi, or are you required to uh, greet people in French? I like the saying bonjour, hi. I think the way it works is that you signal to people that you're willing to speak either French or English, but it's very casual. I'm not sure if you can say it at a government level, but okay. Man, I hope I would like to be inside the Salon Bleu one day. I'm not sure if it's open to tourists. When I lived in, I lived very briefly in England. When I was in England, there you can go inside the Parliament in the UK. Yeah, like you can't be there with the with the members of Parliament, right? You can't walk around them, but there's like a floor where you can like look from above and just kind of check the place. Um, I guess that for transparency, it's like broadcast. Um, People can kind of walk in, but it's very securitized. Like you need to have permission, and you need to ask for permission, and you have to go through the motions. You can just like walk into Parliament the way you would walk into a courtroom. But there are many courtrooms you can't walk into, right? But you can get in a guided tour. You can book online. Oh my god, that's so cool! When this channel gets bigger, I will see if I travel to Quebec. Salon Rouge as well. Whoa. Okay. Yeah, I really want to go. Uh, the two places I really want to visit in Quebec is Quebec City because I want to see the Chateau Frontenac, and the other place I want to see is like the Salon Bleu. Yeah, there's also like the ruins of the Parliament House that was burned down by the English. But I already got a tour of that one, like a digital tour. Um, okay. Ah, I'm a little tired and I have a bit of work to do for the Quebec video. I need to find images of Lester Pearson, who has surprisingly few pictures online. Uh, so yeah, a part that I wanted to fill in with like a picture of him, I actually am going to have to draw. So that's what I'm going to be doing um, once we reach 30 minutes. Uh, Thank you all for being here. I had a lot of fun. I wish you could have been here and talked to Rico, but like just having a conversation with you guys was like super amazing as well. Good luck. Thank you. Do you think that developing and underdeveloped countries have the same amount of obligation as developed states to protect the environment, even though that might restrain their growth? That is a super interesting question. Mm, I learned a lot, to keep up the good work. Thank you. That is a very interesting question, and I guess once I answer it, I will end the stream. Mm, I can get access to the bibliothèque of the Parlement if I ever need to. Whoa, okay, send me an email. Send me an email, please, and I will write to you. Yeah, so I'll tell you what I think about that. The United States used to have the largest forest in America, right? The largest forest in America was, not the Amazon. It was like the Mississippi Basin and basically everything around it. And the Americans chopped down all the wood that was there in order to potentiate, the rail and the things that they used and their paper industry and everything. So the United States destroyed its environment. It destroyed a lot of green areas that they had in order to advance their own industry. Um, and now, for a lot of countries, including like the Brazilians, it sounds very hypocritical when Americans come in and say like, "Oh, you need to take care of the Amazon, right? Like you can't destroy it because you know the Americans destroyed their own forest, and nobody told them anything that they couldn't do it because it was like things within their territory. So what happens with that, right? Um, I guess it's okay for countries that are in the global south to feel that way because uh, the global north exploited pretty much everything that you had, they exploited their own resources, and now they're coming to like you once you've achieved sovereignty, once you've gone past the colonial dynamic, and they're saying this is how you should do public resource and energetics policy, right? And it sounds really hypocritical, but here's where I think we need to run into thinking about the tragedy of the commons. The tragedy of the commons is like something that people in economics also call market failures, which is situations where everyone pursuing their own rational self-interest can end up in situations where, you know, the outcome is bad for everybody. So the classic example is, imagine you are a shepherd and you share your field with a bunch of farmers, and you want your sheep to eat, but everyone wants their sheep to eat, so everyone takes their sheep to eat as much grass as they can, and by doing that they exhaust the field, and the field dies, and then all your sheep die, right? That's a situation where you pursuing your own self-interest can be bad for you and for everyone around you. And that's where you require planning institutions, right? Where things like the UN step in, and things like that become really important. My way to solve that kind of thing would be that, yes, we need to think as a world, because the world is going to have like the problem. And in that sense, sadly, it is on countries like Brazil and countries like the Congo to protect their forests and to make sure that, plants survive, and that plants are kept alive, and that we can have trees that continue to produce oxygen for like all of us. But it is also a responsibility of the developed nations, let's say, to give these countries the technology to create their energetic transition in such a way that they can get, all the benefits of industrialization without, having to go through the traditional kind of resource chain. So what does that mean? It means that solar panels need to be sold cheaply to the south, to the global south. It means that wind turbines need to be maybe given instead of money. It means a lot of things like that. It's a responsibility of the global south to protect its natural resources, but it's a responsibility of the global north to help the energetic transition now that a lot of them have it, right? So we need to think as a world here. Some people are going to benefit unfairly in some ways, others are going to have to limit themselves unfairly in some others. But this is our planet. If we don't make a decision like this, we're all gonna die. So yeah, you know we have to care. We have no option but to care. So yeah, I can get access. I did my previous job with the public when we get calls, but being in BC, everyone is answers in English. Oh, okay, I see. I really want to visit Germany one day. Maybe one day you will. Is there no video feed? Oh, no, there is video feed. OBS tells me there's like a good connection, so I hope there's a good connection. Okay, well, with that, I will be ending the stream. Thank you to everyone who attended. I will be moving on to work on Quebec 3. I hope the video will be done this month. It is pretty much done in terms of visuals. It just needs to be done in terms of audio. So yeah. Thank you all for your continued support. Thank you all for keeping this channel alive through this period of like 0 to no videos. It means a lot to me that, we keep finding ways to have people around, even as, these videos take a very long time to create. This is why I created the streaming channel, because I thought that, maybe you guys would be interested in having the chance to talk to me while I do all these things in the background. And it's also been a lot of fun. I am in a really privileged position where I can do this semi-sustainably, and I am very thankful for, all the opportunities that I have. Plug the streaming channel. You can find the streaming channel. Wait a second. I'm gonna drop the link in the chat. Yeah. You can subscribe to my streaming channel there. As you know, I am a VTuber. I am coming out of the closet as a VTuber. So yeah, yeah, yeah. There's like the VTuber channel where I do streams with friends and people that I meet. I play games. I haven't played in a while because I'm really focused on this channel. I'm trying to get like the Quebec video done, hopefully this month, part one. And yeah, I guess that's all. That will be all. Subscribe to the streaming channel. Give me money. Go to the Patreon and become a Patreon. And yeah, thank you all. Here's to continuing to do this, which I really love to do, and getting the opportunity to talk to all of you later. I got a DM from Rico. I will be talking to Rico next week, maybe. So, there will be a new stream somewhere soon. And yeah, on that note, I will leave. Goodbye. I can't read that, but Malikum Salam and cheers. Yeah. See you. Bye bye.